So I'm going to talk my politics. First of all, I want to say that I'm not in any way political. In my view, we've all been lied to. All of us. The biggest lie for me is the notion of America's exceptionalism and being a force of good in the world. It is clear through direct observation that that is not true. That realization came to me when I started to see what we were doing with respect to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The completely erroneous premises. A, that it was going to help against terrorism. B, that Iraqi, freedom for women, Operation Iraqi Freedom was actually a policy priority for our country, to install democracy there or to find weapons of mass destruction. That we're supposed to be fighting terrorists and we are creating the battleground for a new level of danger and terror. And we spent trillions of dollars in destroying these regions to bring to the forefront the lives of these people, nothing short of hell on earth. And so we want to talk about freedom, and we want to talk about that. We have a country that is divided, where we had to fight for our freedoms here, and the freedoms we fought for within our own country were in the face of the same government that says it's standing for freedom outside of the world, outside of our country. And so when my father's generation was segregated and black people were prevented from going to college, lynched, or the leaders were all unalived. Where's Martin Luther King today? How about Malcolm X? That is how we get our freedom in our country. We had to fight for it. And we still are fighting for it. I could look at what Ron DeSantis is doing. Demonizing LGBT community people, shaming Disney for welcoming our brothers and sisters, into a world where they've been shamed and shunned for being who they are. And that's American freedom that we're talking about. Building walls in the melting pot. A country founded on the genocide of natives, and now we're building walls for people with the same skin tones. No wall for Canada, big wall for Mexico. And then telling our people that that's where the terrorists and the drugs come from. It's literally mass hysteria and ignorance. Now, the left, in my view, is on the right side of history in terms of, some of the things that they're saying, but they use the same propaganda and scapegoating, and they're taking advantage of the MAGA people by rallying up everybody to point to them. And they use the same techniques in propaganda, but at least they're not so committed to misinformation that they are dementing the minds of their followers and sycophantic brainwashees. And so, the truth of the matter to me is saying that America has fallen from grace would be an understatement, and that for the rest of the world, it doesn't represent anything other than a place of material prosperity at the expense of most countries that we do business with. Where South America is one big plantation, where the indigenous people struggle to get by and are exploited by the more European, people. And we do business with them, with multinational corporations, to make the cost of coffee and beef lower here, thus ruining their agriculture. And so we are responsible for the influx of migrants to our country, economically speaking, and use the leverage of the dollar to destroy the lives of citizens that are operating under regimes that don't care about the citizens anyway. And so if you're going to starve a country out to manipulate them, to force them to support some of our more inhumane global policies and agendas, we have to keep in mind that we are hurting ordinary average people who also may not even have a choice with respect to the people that are in power within those regions. And we operate with no humanity or dignity. And so if you're going to talk to me about Iraqi freedom, and then you're just going to walk away and leave the whole region in complete chaos and patrol it with drones, acting like we did something good for the world, amassing probably millions dead, not all from the wars, but also from the infrastructure, also from the lack of, the ability to police themselves, the infrastructure, the education. Not only that, the generational trauma of hatred and sociopathies that would come along with children watching bombs blow up. people being maimed and destroyed, power being taken out where they can't even deal with people in the hospitals, and creating a breeding ground of a new form of terrorism. So while we're sitting here talking about regimes, it's like maybe Saddam wasn't a great guy, which I don't think he was. He seemed like a psychopath. However, the region had order, and it isn't our job to go out there and act as if we give a shit about people that live there when we don't care about our own people. America doesn't have any legitimacy with respect to representing the rights and freedoms of its own citizens, including anybody marginalized. Yet we want to go and meddle in the world and assert that we have a track record of equality here, when we haven't even made reparations for the people that built the country over hundreds of years of free labor, treated like animals and beaten to the point where they have generational trauma that is still surfacing within inner cities that America has never even called an American issue. We literally have to have Black history here, segregating our history to try to make them feel special. We'll give them a month. Wow. Oh, and we've got Black America. Black America is the way that America sweeps Black America under the rug. Because anytime we talk about police brutality, we can have the whole of Facebook talking about Chicago. What about Chicago? Look what they do to themselves. And so as they pick apart the cause of freedom and deny the history that resulted in the conditions of our fellow Americans that happen to have darker skin, when they pick apart all those conversations, what do they leave? They say, look at Black America, but it's not history, it's self-determination. And so if it's self-determination and you look at the afflictions, the only thing you're left with to attribute the failures of Black America that you isolate and call Black America and point at so easily and happily is the Blackness. Yeah. And so when you're standing in the face of progress, demonizing Black America every time a white cop, kills another Black American, and take no responsibility whatsoever in the acknowledgement of the history, well, I mean, geez, what are you left with? Racism. And so the reason I would acknowledge this is because guess what? I can love America and tell the truth. I could be grateful for my life and the opportunity of 2023. I don't need to be resigned and cynical and a victim. But to avoid victimhood, I need to call it what it is. That if we're going to start to turn our country around and turn the world around, we're going to have to tell the truth. That somebody's going to have to step up and take responsibility, because it's not happening in our government. It's not happening in Congress. It's not happening from the president. Like, Obama's my favorite president, and I expected him to do something about these wars. I thought that he had more integrity than that. Now, I think he's a man of integrity and decency, and I think many good people might get into politics and then realize the futility because of the craziness of politics and getting things done. And, we have to maintain certain norms, traditions, and relationships, and that even just making statements can be the basis of conflict and confusion when the message is change administration to administration. But at some point, we can't keep going down this path. We can't keep watching sociopaths invading countries for no reason. We cannot keep blowing people up. We can't call human beings collateral damage. We can't say, oops, there goes another family in the war on terror. We can't scapegoat whole countries for the actions of 12 or 13 people that are actually from a different country. We can't call out terrorists when those same organizations were the ones that our CIA funded and financed when they were our allies, because they represented our interest in the past, in the same way that Iraq did against Iran. And so here's a country, Iraq, got $90 billion from Reagan, and then suddenly, starts wanting to nationalize oil, and now he's a problem. And so, with no track record of decency, humanity, humility, and freedom here, especially amongst people of different colors and ethnicities, it's very interesting how we seem so preoccupied with the freedom and democracy of people around the world, when we could commit genocide and build walls in our country and make the Black people do all the work and barely even let them vote one generation ago. Somehow now we're supposed to be trusted to police the world. It's just interesting that it's always the dark-skinned people that seem to get it the worst from us.